So this question, it's a little bit long, but it's an important question because I always tell people, I think your diet that you recommend is the best and I follow it, but not everybody can. So I tell them do the least restrictive program you can do that will get you.
And why is it they can't follow a health promoting SOS-free diet? They're
Well,
worried about getting too healthy?
well, people tell me different reasons. Their family's not on board. They travel. They have stress. I hear every
Okay.
excuse in the
But
book.
people can travel. Do you travel?
Well, I don't since the pandemic, but I traveled for 10 years
Were
every.
you able to maintain a health promoting diet on when you traveled?
Yeah, if anything,
Okay, so you did.
Oh yeah.
So that's not a real reason. That's just an inconvenience. And have you ever had family members that weren't, and you do have now family members that aren't necessarily 100% compliant?
Yeah, my
Well,
husband.
that means it doesn't keep you from being compliant. So that's not a real reason why people get it. Makes it harder. It makes it.
I'm only telling you what I hear, or they're emotional eaters.
I'm trying so people can't be emotional eaters, but eat a whole plant food SOS-free diet.
Listen, I agree with everything you say. I did what you said.
I just wonder about that. People say,
they had childhood trauma. They have stress. Somebody in their family died. Their dog was sick. Their family doesn't support them. Their kids doesn't support them. I mean,
that's all true. And those things all make it more difficult. That doesn't mean they can't do it though. So we need to make sure people understand that yes, if you have childhood trauma and you have to travel and you have non-supportive and you have teenagers that live at home and you work at a place with, that's not supportive and you don't know anybody else in the world that actually understands this and your doctor's antagonistic, those things all make it more difficult. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It's a question of how much effort you have to put in and how you have to manipulate your environment to make those things happen. I've seen people with terrible emotional trauma that had difficult childhoods and lack of support and antagonistic histories, but they still are able to do it. So let's just say that if you have those disadvantages, it's really hard. Let's not say they can't do it.
Well, I've seen, you've probably seen this too. I've seen people make extraordinary efforts with their health, losing anywhere from 50 to hundreds of pounds to gain it back. It just seems hard for people to maintain this lifestyle.
Absolutely. It's very difficult to maintain it. Why? Because one of the things that motivate people to do this, for example, is pain. When people are in agonizing pain, they'll do anything. They'll even eat well in order to get rid of pain. When the pain goes away, it's like, oh, I'm better now. I don't have to do it. Or they're in psychological pain because they're having trouble with how they're attracting mates or doing whatever it is they need to do. They accomplish the goal and then the motivation tends to wane. So I agree, adherence is a big problem, and it's mostly a problem because people live in a world designed to make them fat, sick, and miserable, and there's not the support around them. But one of the things they can do is try to figure out ways to get more support. Maybe they can join groups like you do, AJ, where they're getting ongoing education, inspiration, and support. Maybe cultivate some friends that are helpful and supportive. That might be useful. Or get rid of some of the negative influences in their life so that those energy vampires aren't always sucking them dry. But whatever it takes, being healthy and happy should be a priority. And if it is, figuring out how to adapt a whole plant food SOS-free diet is an important consideration, in my opinion.
Yep. Well, like my acting teacher used to say, how bad do you want it? Okay. So anyway, the point of that was this question from Judy was that she did my program, went from 22.5 to 20 from her BMI after minimally invasive bypass surgery to clear a 100% blocked LED. And she said, since then, she's made conscious modifications to her diet that made it sustainable for her. Now she's using flour from whole grains most days, Food for Life tortillas and breakfast cereals, no fat pita, whole grain pasta, adding a modest amount of salt to most meals, eating more sugar than previously, a few tablespoons of maple syrup, but still 100% oil free, and eating about the same quantity overall, although her proportion of leafy greens has diminished. And she said now her BMI is back up to about 21.
Of course, she's on the weight gain diet. She's on the diet that you would ask somebody to do that's trying to be sort of health conscious, but wants to gain as much weight as possible. Let's get the flour and sugar in there. Let's get rid of the greens, which prevent you from gaining weight. So she's proven the point that if your goal is to, kind of get on a sort of healthy diet, but to be overweight, you want to eat a lot of refined carbohydrates and salt and sugar. That's the best way to do it. And it works. It works very consistently. On the other hand, if you wanted to be leaner and meaner, Then what you have to do is pump the fruits, the vegetables, the salad, particularly the greens. And, I don't know of any way to violate the laws of physics in thermodynamics, which means as long as she keeps eating the way that she's eating, she's going to keep getting fatter. And the moment she goes back to a whole plant food, minimally processed SOS-free diet, she'll be losing 1 to 2 pounds of weight down to her optimum weight.
Well, yeah, because she says that now, when she's adding these things back in, her cholesterol went up, her blood pressure went up, her weight went up. And so she says, I'm finding it hard to believe that the small amount of salt and sugar and flour I'm using can explain such significant changes. Am I in denial?
Yes, she's in denial. It was Mark Twain, the American philosopher, that said denial was not just a river in Egypt. She is in denial. She's getting substantial quantities of concentrated refined carbohydrates. We know that because she's able to gain weight. And it means she has good plumbing, and she's got good biology there because she's able to take these highly processed foods and store them as fat. And the way that she can prove this is just go exclusively whole plant food SOS-free for 6 weeks. Look at the 12 pounds of weight that she's going to lose, and then she can get out of denial. She needs to eat more, she needs to sleep more, she needs to exercise more, and she needs to stop eating the foods that makes her fat.
Well, it's so interesting because, she says she's avoiding oil, which most of the people in our space know to do. But sugar and flour, they still have a fairly high caloric density. But can the salt itself contribute?
Yeah, the salt has a powerful passive overeating. And people say, well, how could salt make me fat? There's no calories in it. But it stimulates what's called passive overeating. Simplistically, if you just took, say, rice and you ate until you were satiated with rice, you'd eat a certain amount. If the next day, everything else being equal, you took rice and salted it up, you'd eat more before you felt satisfied. And so that extra 5 or 10% of calories that come from that artificial stimulation of dopamine that comes from the salt in the diet, that itself can make you fat. Although it's better if you combine that with highly refined carbohydrates like the tortillas and the flour products, because those products would taste like crap without the salt. And so as a consequence, it's easier to consistently overeat them. I wish that we were in the business of let's make people fat. It's so much easier. You could just tell people everything they're hearing on the advertising, just believe that, and just have them watch ads all day long, and then do what they're shown, and then they would get fat. And that's working great for over 2/3 of the population. You don't have to work with them, but the people that want to be thinner, that's the problem, because now they have to overcome all this conditioning and brainwashing and miseducation that they've given. And your patient here is an example of that. She has trouble believing just a little of this and a little of that would result in her being fat. But she's living proof of it. And she can be even better living proof by go back on the healthy diet, get rid of the crap that's making her fat, and watch it come off. And then I want to hear what she has to say. I want to hear from her after 6 weeks of that, whether or not it works. I want to hear the person that tells me they've done it right and it doesn't work.
Yep.
I don't hear that. I hear they've done it right, but it's difficult.
Yeah.
And it's difficult not because they wouldn't do it if it was done for them. It's difficult because it takes effort, energy. It takes the social consequences. If you had somebody on a deserted island and the only foods available were these foods, you would not have obesity.
Yep. Well, Connie says you speak the truth. You don't sugarcoat. You don't oil coat or salt coat either.
No sugar, oil, or salt. SOS-free.
Yeah. Okay. And Louise says, very grateful for your direct answers.